that this whole place becomes yours? I do not plan to finish this chapter today. I would like to get through the primary structures and then stop, because once we get into the secondary structures, they're a bit more detailed, and I know you guys probably don't have the brain capacity for more detail right now, given the fact that we just took an exam. And you guys probably care more about figuring out how you did on said exam than listening to me talk about the lymphatic system. So I get it. But that is where we are. So if I get to that point and it's early, I'm probably just gonna let you guys go. I don't want to force material down your throats that will end up not being absorbed because you're too, well, the beginning part of this is really easy. And so I don't mind covering that part today with you just like half absorbing what I said. And the reason being is if you understood blood vessels, you're really going to understand the beginning of the lymphatic system. Because the lymphatic system really functions with their vessels, at least, in very much the same way that our blood vessels function. Okay? So, what does the lymphatic system do? Well, we've already kind of talked about one thing, which is it absorbs what our blood vessels don't reabsorb, right, in the interstitial fluid. But it is where we transport and house our lymphocytes and our other immune cells. It is a filtration system, okay? It deals with the excess fluid that doesn't get picked up during reabsorption in the bloodstream, right? But it functions very similarly with our bloodstream as well. So what generally happens is, just in very general terms, our lymphatic capillaries are going to reabsorb the excess interstitial fluid that doesn't get reabsorbed with our blood vessels, and it's going to transport it. And when it transports it, it generally transports it to a lymph node where it gets filtered, and then it gets shuttled through the lymphatic system to ultimately go back to the blood, okay? So it's kind of a bypass of our blood vessels, and we can do some cleanup of blood, of what ultimately will end up as fluid in the blood as well. So a lot of times our lymphatic system is going to pick up potential viruses, cellular debris, it'll pick up bacteria, other pathogens. It does a good job to clean things up for us. We have our lymphatic vessels, I should say tissues, not issues. Sorry about that, did not notice that. Lymphatic tissues and our organs. Lymph is transported through the vessels just like we have blood vessels to transport our blood. What are the characteristics of lymph? Because we are picking up interstitial fluid that did not get reabsorbed into the bloodstream, most of our fluid that enters into our lymphatic system is very similar to our interstitial fluid and to our blood, okay? We do call this specific fluid lymph though. If it enters into, once it goes from the interstitial fluid and then enters into our lymphatic vessels, the name changes to lymph. So if you hear that term, lymph, then that tells you that we are in the lymphatic system with that fluid. Okay? The components, water, That is the main component. Okay. Dissolved solutes, small amounts of protein, but the big thing here are the cellular debris that didn't get picked up by the blood, pathogens, and even cancer cells that are trying to metastasize, which we will get to in a second. The smallest of our lymphatic vessels are lymphatic capillaries. And just like with our blood, where we have regular capillaries that allow blood to flow through and site of transfer, we have these capillary beds. We have lymphatic capillary beds that are the site of transfer as well. These tend to be interspersed where our blood capillaries are. So as you will see, our lymphatic vessels all run along our arteries and veins, okay? They are companions to those arteries and veins, just like one artery is a companion to the vein. We even see that with our lymphatic system as well. Okay? Our lymphatic capillaries are slightly larger than our blood capillaries. This allows for slightly larger things to come in. There is no basement membrane to them, and instead the way they function to allow things to come in is through a flap system. So if this is a capillary, and I'm only going to draw one, okay? This is a flap, and when this comes down, our lymph can flow in, or interstitial can flow in. When this pops back up like this, we don't get any flow in, okay? And what is going to control that is, as always, what do you think? Pressure gradient, okay? It's pressure gradients. When the pressure in the interstitial fluid is higher than in here, it's going to put pressure on that flap to push it open and allow our flow of our interstitial fluid into our lymphatic capillary. You may see the term lacteal. Lacteal is just a special name for our lymphatic capillaries that are found inside our GI tract. So they are the same thing as any other lymphatic capillary, but they are just found within our GI tract, and therefore they've got a special name. I quite literally just covered this and drew it on the board, right? It is pressure that opens these flaps, and then things get to move. Now, the thing I didn't cover is we go from capillaries to our lymphatic vessels, to our lymphatic trunks, to our lymphatic ducts, and we are going from small to large. So as that fluid moves through, it's moving to progressively larger vessels, okay? Much like our venous return in our venous system. Metastasis in cancer, how many people know what that is? And if you do, are you willing to tell us what it is? So it's not just that the cancer is growing, it's that a piece of the cancer of the primary tumor has broken off of the primary tumor. Does everybody know what the characteristics of cancer are, or do you just know that cancer is bad? Cancer is bad, right? Okay. So let's go over the primary characteristics of cancer. So, a cancer cell is one of your cells, okay? It is our cells. This is partly why it's so hard to treat. Because if we give you something, even if we're trying to target the cancer cell and it's targeting one of your cancer cells, if we're not careful, it's going to target every other cell in the body. Why? Because even if we're using something within that cancer cell, well, guess what? It is one of your own cells. And not only that, everything that we have kind of just does stuff to cells in general. And that's the problem. Like chemotherapy is not going to just target the cancer, it's going to target all cells, right? Cancer is known as a cell that is proliferating more rapidly than the surrounding cells. And has invaded another tissue source. So what does that mean? Okay. Rapidly proliferating cells doesn't really mean that you have cancer. It just means you have a tumor. Okay? If you have a cell and you've got a tumor that's sitting like this, but this is another different type of cell, but it hasn't invaded into there yet, that's what's called a benign tumor. We aren't going to do anything about it. Might take it out, might not. The only reason why we would take it out is because it's causing you issues, okay? So, I have a tumor on my thyroid. Your neck is kind of small to have anything growing in it, right? It's benign, so we're not touching it right now. But if I start having trouble swallowing or anything like that, they'll take my thyroid out, partly because I really don't need it anymore because I'm on the synthetic thyroid medication, but also because we don't want me to have problems with a tumor in my neck, right? But if this tissue, this rapidly proliferating tumor, now starts to invade into here, now it's cancerous, okay? Now in the medical, this is the difference between science and medicine, okay? There's a big difference. Science, we are saying that this is progressing to eventually, like we generally will say, this is progressing, and it's on like this progressive towards this. It may never happen in your lifetime because it's slow enough growing, or the conditions aren't met, the mutations aren't met for it to go in, but the possibility always is there. In medicine, it's black and white. Either it's benign or it's malignant. We don't care in medicine. It's either you got cancer or you don't, okay? What makes it rapidly proliferating is a series of mostly mutations and environmental factors that have caused it to do that. The environmental factors could be things your body has already done, like angiogenesis to the tumor to give it more food and stuff like that. And this problem, the problem with cancer cells is they don't need to be really attached to anything. And they're constantly growing, and our cells have a cell cycle control system that normally will pick up when something isn't functioning correctly and kill that cell. Well, cancer cells have bypassed all of our checkpoints, all of the problems, and found a way to grow anyways. It's like rapid evolution right at your fingertips, right there, right? They are growing better than your abnormal cells. And that in lies the problem. They don't act like normal cells anymore. Normal cells normally need room to grow. Cancer cells can grow one on top of each other and it doesn't matter. They normally need to be anchored to something. Cancer cells don't care. They'll continue to grow and multiply. That's where metastasis comes in. Metastasis is of that big tumor, a piece breaks off, enters into our bloodstream, and lands in another area and takes hold. Metastasis is really hard for cancer to do. There are many attempts that fail at it because at the core of that cancer tumor, that primary tumor, you still have remnants of what you used to be, right? The environment that you were in is the good environment. That environment is good, right? If you are in the lungs, right, going to the liver, the kidney, it's a completely different environment. And that's hard for any cell to migrate to those areas, get picked up by those areas, and then establish and colonize there. But that's what metastasis is. By the time we have reached metastasis with cancer, we have really gotten very far in our progression of the cancer, and by the time metastasis happens, almost every cancer is terminal. That does not mean that everybody who gets stage 3, stage 4 cancer is going to die from their cancer. We can't really give an estimate because it's so high prevalence of death at that point. And some people will respond to treatment really well and they will survive from it. And then other people, even if the cancer is surviving, is it dying, their bodies can't hold on to with the treatment. How does metastasis happen? It enters first into the bloodstream, but goes into the capillaries where we're trying to lay root into the tissues, but it's going to enter the interstitial fluid. If we are lucky, our lymphatic vessels are going to pick up those cancer cells before it takes hold in those tissues. And then maybe they can pick up those cancer cells and kill them with our immune system. Sometimes that doesn't happen though. Those cancer cells will go right through the lymphatic system and drop in another area, just like in the blood, right? So know that when it comes to metastasis, unfortunately, there are 2 modes of transportation for metastasis. It can happen with our lymphatic vessels, but also with our blood vessels too. Are we good? That? I know I spent a little time on that. But you didn't know about cancer cells, and I'm a cellular biologist, so you asked about cells. Of course, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole. Directly from our capillaries, we are going to feed into our lymphatic vessels. These are adjacent to the arteries and veins, have all 3 tunics, and have valves just like our veins do to prevent pooling and backflow. There is no pump for the lymphatic system itself. Instead, it uses the skeletal muscle and respiratory pumps, just like the veins do. But because it is close to our arteries as well, the pulsatile movement of the arteries can help with a little bit of the flow. And our smooth muscles and our larger lymphatic vessels around those, the contraction of those can help. Some vessels will connect to lymph nodes. These are these kidney-shaped. So in any picture you see, the lymphatic system will be in green. Your book likes to use green for the lymphatic system. So here are our lymphatic vessels. They are connecting to these lymph nodes. Not all are going to connect to lymph nodes, but lymph nodes is the site of filtration. Okay? These are filtration centers. We will go over the filtration center tomorrow, not today. From our lymphatic vessels, we are going to go to our lymphatic trunks. These are our larger vessels, and there are 5 of them. So now we are getting to being able to actually have some names to these. Now, it's not so much that you need to know each one of the names of these. Look at the names. Jugular trunk, subclavian trunk, bronchomediastinal trunk, intestinal trunk, lumbar trunk. by the names, it tells you where we're draining from. Okay? Drains lymph from the head and neck, the jugular. Kind of makes sense, right? Our subclavian trunk, upper limbs, your arms, okay? Breasts and the superficial thoracic wall. I'm not going to go through all of them, they are there, but there are only 5 trunks. And from there, we go to the lymphatic ducts, which there are only 2 of them. These are our largest vessels. And they bring that lymph that has flowed through the capillaries to the vessels, to the trunks, all the way to the ducts, and we bring it back to our blood circulation. We have the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct. The right lymphatic duct is by our right clavicle, so it's right up here. Okay? It drains the upper right quadrant of the body only. Okay? Our thoracic duct does everything else. Okay? So here's the right upper quadrant. This is the right lymphatic duct in the dark green, and this really weird orangish or yellowish green color is our thoracic duct. This is our largest lymphatic vessel that we have, and it drains most of the body. Okay. How many people have heard of lymphedema before? Lymphedema is an accumulation of interstitial fluids. Normally you see people have lymphedema in their legs and their arms. Legs is more prominent than arms just because gravity. Legs are always having that problem, okay? Causes swelling and a lot of pain. The more swelling you have, the more pain. Okay. If it gets bad enough, it could interfere with wound healing. People with lymphedema will generally end up with infections on their legs that don't heal. Most of our lymphedema is caused by blockage in our lymphatic vessels. How do we control it? If we can control it, not everybody can we control it in compression garments for those that have slight lymphedema. You can get exercise. Exercise is extremely important because movement is key to push that fluid through. And then there are lymphatic massages that can be given. That the degree of help with lymphatic massages generally is based on the degree of severity of the disease. Okay. Diuretics are sometimes given if it gets really bad, right, to try to just get rid of some fluid. Okay, extreme cases, as what is shown here, is known as elephantitis. Okay, we might get out early today. You guys are like, I don't care, just get through it so we can leave. We have both primary lymphatic organs and secondary lymphatic organs. The difference between the two is what happens with our lymphocytes, okay? Our primary lymphatic organs are involved in the formation and the maturation of our lymphocytes. Secondary lymphatic structures do not form lymphocytes, but house them and our other immune cells, okay? The secondary lymphatic structures are the sites of immune response. So that's what makes them important. It's also why there's more detail given in those. We only have 2 primary structures, that's the thymus and the red bone marrow. Our secondary structures are tonsils, our lymph nodes, our spleen, and technically, I'll say mold cells. You'll see why I say technically when we get to it. Okay. Let's talk about the red bone marrow. Red bone marrow is where we make our what? Blood. In that blood, we are making both red blood cells and white blood cells, right? Within the white blood cells, we have our leukocytes and our lymphocytes. And when it comes to our lymphatic system, the lymphocytes are very important, okay? The formed elements that are important here are our T lymphocytes and our B lymphocytes. The T lymphocytes will migrate directly to the thymus. And they will mature at the thymus. The thymus is involved in T lymphocyte maturation. It's located in the mediastinum. It is very large in children, but in adults it's really, really small. It shrinks as we age. It grows until puberty, and then once you hit puberty and you go through puberty, at that point, once you're through puberty, it starts regression. And as it regresses, it gets replaced by adipose tissue. There are 2 lobes associated with it. Each is surrounded by a capsule of connective tissue. Each of our lobes are divided into lobules. Each lobule is going to have an outer cortex associated with it and an inner medulla region. The cortex is where we house our immature T lymphocytes, and as they mature, they move into the medulla. And with that, it's pretty early, but I said I would finish here, so I will finish here. We are done. I don't want to continue just because we can't, because the next one